Welcome to the AI Lab Unfiltered podcast, where we talk about everything AI and AI related. In this week's episode, we talk about autonomous driving, we talk about AGI, and we talk about how to use AI in simple projects around the house, including landscaping. I am Drew Veach from BizStream. I am joined by Mr. Pete Tarrin from New Wave. Good to see you, Pete.
Happy to be here.
We have a really fun guest today. I'm super excited. He's got a really, really robust background. We have Mr. Anupam Banerjee he is from Aptiv. He is the principal product manager at Aptiv. Welcome, Anupam.
Thanks, Drew. Nice to meet you, Pete.
Nice to meet you too. Thanks for coming on.
Excited to talk to you today because you have automotive history, you have product history. There's a lot that you have done in your tenure thus far, and there's still a lot more coming. You've worked at Ford, you've worked at HTC Global, you're now at Aptiv. Give me some more of your background of more that you've done that I haven't mentioned here.
And before you go into that, we had talked before we started recording. Did you want to have a little disclaimer here before we get going?
Yeah, sure. With full disclosure, all views are personal and nothing related to my company's as such specific information. With that bit of my background over myself, I did my computer science, and then I moved to US and I did my master's in machine learning and AI. And worked previously leading AI teams at Ford, and right now working on generative AI solutions at Aptiv. Aptiv is a tier 1 supplier to the OEMs. I'm really passionate about the intersection of AI product and human-centered design. So we'll be talking about everything about them in this podcast.
Awesome. So you already caught my attention when you talked about leading AI teams at Ford. So can you talk just what does that mean? Like what is an AI team?
Yeah.
And how were you involved with that?
Right. Before ChatGPT era, AI existed. And in many places, if you think on the verticals, whether it's a marketing or your supply chain or your manufacturing, or even business processes, the tech teams were building AI solutions. Previously, it's called machine learning, to kind of in many cases predict what might happen, right? Whether we're predicting whether there will be supply chain delays. Predicting whether a machine will go down in a factory floor, predicting which customer likely to buy certain accessories of certain vehicles and things like that. All of them needs solutions to be developed, and those solutions needs to be developed on the company's data. And you have to build algorithms, you have to build systems, you have to build interfaces, and then integrate all of them into a package solution that you can deploy and deliver and make it available to your target business customers. Leading AI teams are obviously data scientists, engineers, designers, and then really understands what's the product goal is, and then how do you map the value of AI, because one of the biggest things is that you don't really know what's the value of AI. Do you even need to do AI? Because sometimes it's just the snake oil. So how do you bring clarity out of chaos, and then kind of think that yes, AI makes sense here, let's do it, but how do you build and then deploy that?
Were you calling it an AI team, or was it the machine learning team, or because now we look back, it's AI. But we didn't have ChatGPT like you said. So what were you calling it then?
Yeah, I mean, even back then, because the broader umbrella of technical terms is artificial intelligence, right? And then the subdomains or the subfields, if you want to call it, there is machine learning, There is predictive AI or analytics, or even like the generative AI part of it. There's some optimizations also you can call, but the if you go back to 1950s history of AI, the term coined around that time itself. So it's the broader definition kind of that takes care all of these subfields together in what's called AI. We used to call AI ML team.
Okay.
Until recently, where then generative AI became the prominent in this kind of domain.
Yeah.
It's just way cooler to say AI team now.
Yeah, it's always like I mentioned, it's always this kind of the technology hype that has gone with AI, right? There was, I think, 1980s or so. There's a time called AI winter time, because nobody believed in neural networks, and Jeffrey Hinton, and he believed in that. He continued to work on that, and then that's where the deep learning and the neural networks came, which actually resulted that image generation breakthrough technologies. That's really founded the whole computer vision era, right? So, like you said, it's always this kind of up and down with AI, right?
Yeah.
If you look back the history now.
Oh,
I know.
sorry. I was looking at my question.
We never know. We both have so many questions, but we don't always know who's going to go next.
So, at some of your previous places that you've worked at, Ford, HTC, and now Aptiv, tell me give me some use cases of where you guys are leveraging AI, where it's been the biggest. Here's the big moment where it changed a lot for us.
Yeah. Well, pre-generative AI era, if you see where AI was most successful across the domain, across the geographies, you can clearly identify there are two areas. Number one was ad business, where Google really put AI into it, and then the autonomous driving area, right? That's where the AI was going. That was the most too successful if you have to choose between many different applications.
Yeah.
But now, obviously, generative AI has made AI accessible to many other verticals. So why it has happened? If you look at that, majority of the companies cannot really build foundational model. They just can't. They don't have talent. They don't have compute. They don't have know-how how to do this. So these models are available for you. Then you build the application on top of it. So that has made the AI accessible to many companies that they couldn't achieve that in the past. So that's the number one. And then obviously the compute has gotten cheaper. Data has been increasingly been accessible and been generated and being stored for AI. So all of this together now we are seeing that applications of AI in many other domains, and whether it's a knowledge search for making the knowledge worker more productive through generative AI. If you look at supply chain, how do you optimize your supply chain? If you want to do manufacturing, how do you make sure your assembly line is working at near perfect schedule? If you want to look at the marketing, can you do more targeted campaign? Tons of use cases are possible because obviously the accessibility to compute, and then also the data, and then like I mentioned, the know how to build models or leverage from the off-the-shelf models itself.
So when you are using it for not just, or I should say, you can use it for the engineering of the product all the way down to the implementation of it. You could use it to run models of how is it going to work in this environment. Where are you seeing it that this really sped up? Like, is there a spot that it really sped up, a spot that used to be a manual team had to do this? Now we've got this implemented and we're going.
Yeah. I definitely see that. So if there are 2 or 3 areas. Number one, I would say coding. So if you look at the LLMs are becoming increasingly smarter at developing code. And you already have, if you see the tools, there's GitHub Copilot, Cursor, and so on and so forth that getting launched. Claude's ability to code. This is code generation is one of the. Now, if you put that into perspective, what it ensures that your existing developers and engineers are 10x productive, right? You, if used well, you make sure your junior devs are also becoming proficient at coding in a rapid speed. But then, the way I'm a product manager. I don't do code every day, but then I can use that to my ability to build the prototypes faster than ever. So that's one area I would say, the code generation ability.
Do you have an example of like something that used to take you a month now takes you a day? Like, do you have an example of that?
Sure. Yeah. So let's say that I want to build a web app, web application. How do I, in the past, what would I do? I will try to think about, I'll talk to the business, I'll see what's the problem they are trying to solve, and then I'll go to my designer, and then I'll try to sketch in a manual wireframes, and then I will try to understand, okay, is this gonna solve this? But even after that, in many cases, the business wouldn't see a live prototype. Then I'll go back to engineers, and then let's develop this for next 3 months, and then I will bring it back. Guess what now? If you use a vibe coding tool, you can literally prompt, and you can literally get a functioning prototype within a day.
So you just said you could have taken you 3 months.
Yep.
In the past, and you're doing it in 1 day.
Yep, literally by myself itself. I don't need anybody else. I can build a prototype right there.
Nice.
So if you think from that perspective, from macroeconomics perspective, now that tool is accessible to even the small and medium businesses. So if they know how to use that, and they were stuck in the past with not having enough skill sets, they can help get these tools in their disposal and be really digitally native.
It's crazy. You talked a little bit earlier about computer vision and autonomous driving, and so I was just curious if you were involved in that when you were at Ford, any of the autonomous driving, and just if you were you.
I supported some of these teams with their, sort of a platforms type thing. These are really complex. People thought AV is a easier problem, but that as it been developed, that last 5% of accuracy is the hardest to get.
Yeah.
So that opens up all sorts of questions of, can you really deploy autonomous vehicles at any place in any conditions? And that has been the hardest problem, the scale of that. Obviously, if you go to Silicon Valley, Waymo is running all day and time.
Right.
I did supported them in terms of some of the platform side of things of how you build, run models. But I haven't myself worked on kind of the algorithm side.
I don't know how much of that you can share, so just don't if you don't want to. But we were with another guest, we were talking about how AI is being implemented in robotics, and that's really what autonomous driving is, right? That car is a robot and it's being driven by AI, where there's a virtual model of that car in a virtual environment that you can throw different weather at, you can throw different road conditions, you can throw people running across the road. Like, were you guys using those virtual environments to train could you just talk about that? I find that so fascinating. Could you talk about some interesting things about how that works?
Yeah, that's really, it's technically, it's called simulation environment. Yeah. And it's a hot topic right now. I was in a conference just a couple of weeks back, AutoSense at Detroit, and a lot of people were talking about that. So the problem is that in ADAS or AV world, you want to find that which edge case that might fail, right? Where the accident might occur, where the vehicle might not behave the way you want it to. But to test it out, in theory, you have to drive it for millions of miles.
Right.
But in practice, in all scenarios, you would not be able to do that. So how do you get to that? So one promise of this is that can you generate this data, synthetically generate the data, and provide it in a simulation environment and see where there might be glitches that you can solve. And so if you see that what's comes out from this is that use AI to generate the data to train AI models. So that's it's becoming to. So yeah, it's I think a very recent advancement. People are trying it out and see how much they're successful. We have to see across many companies they're trying this out. Obviously, if you see that NVIDIA's previous demo in their latest GTC conference, Jensen Huang showed that they had simulation on computer graphics that allowed them to create gamings that they previously could not achieve that kind of clarity and the pixels. But we have to see how that really translates into the AV and ADAS world.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that. I find that so fascinating that just building things in a virtual world, and then you can just release it into the real world, and it has already learned that. It's just
a million tests in a second.
Yeah.
So we talked about some stuff in business. We talked about some use cases in there. Tell me about how you're using AI personally. I'm interested to see what tools. We're always curious how people use tools, what they're doing with them. Any examples of stuff that was amazing to you of how it was used?
Right. I mean, if for work, like I mentioned, I find the vibe coding tools are really, really helpful. From the idea to the prototypes, right?
Which ones are the major ones that you're using?
Yeah, I'm using, for example, Figma, right? Which is a famous design tool, and kind of vibe code it out and see how this comes out. But then, for work, for personal reason, I haven't find any significant difference between usage between different tools. Perplexity has been sort of my go-to tool in terms of because it does the web rounding really well. When I ask something, kind of find this links and they have really combined the web search and the sort of LLM concepts in meshed really well from a user experience perspective. But I've been using this Claude, ChatGPT or Perplexity, sometimes Gemini as well, in various capacity. I haven't really seen big difference in the consumer space as in, but at work there is difference of what makes a good tool for particularly depending upon use case that you want to use for.
Is there we were talking earlier, like you could use AI to plan a trip, or people use AI to use recipes. Is there a recent use case where you were like, man, that is either one just really cool or it saved me a bunch of time? Is there anything that you've done recently that's kind of blown you away?
Yeah, it's funny that you asked this question. So this summer I was getting my landscape updated, and then what I did is I took a picture of my a lawn, and then I sent to ChatGPT and said that redesign this with add sort of a pathway to it, and then and think about how this can be remade and things like that. And then I showed the landscaper, and he was blown away, like in terms of ChatGPT's ability to take my prompt and take that image and give me an updated image back that would be like the future landscape.
Yeah.
Like if you think from that perspective of, or if you can make these tools available to the landscapers, they can come up with the new design again incredibly fast with all different options that's possible.
And to be able to vet that out before you even talk to the landscaper. So you're going to the landscaper going, this is what I want.
Yep.
At that point, versus talking with them, well, what's available? Well, what would that look like? I've never thought about using it that way. That is a really good idea to do, because my yard looks like shit. So
that is, I wonder if there's a name for this, because I have another example of what you just described, where you take something to the professional that you've already done AI on. So we have an AI acceptable use policy where I work, and AI wrote it, but the lawyer vetted it and confirmed it, because we didn't want to just have AI write it, put it in the handbook, and then get sued later because we're not lawyers. But there's got to be there will be, I would imagine, a term for that, where you're doing the work ahead of time and the professional just kind of gives it its final blessing, like, yep, that works. Because at least today, maybe the AI is not going to take into account like drainage or, the different parts of the landscape that only a professional would know today. It doesn't.
Yeah, or would it? It'd be my question.
Maybe. But yeah, that idea of doing, like, saving yourself time and money by using AI to do some of the heavy lifting and having we talked about this earlier today, having, that last 20%, and AI is still like not quite there with that last 20%.
Our theory is AI gets you 80% of the way there pretty quickly.
Yep.
It's that last 20% that's the doozy, that you really, it's the fine tuning. It's really where that dream becomes reality, if you will. And it seems like that gap is getting smaller, but the outcome is getting even bigger. So at the same time, because the tools are getting so much more powerful every day.
Yeah. It's if you have recently heard, listened to Sam Altman podcast. I think he was doing it with his brother.
Yep.
And a couple of years back, when the AGI will come, and now he changed the term. It's super intelligence, and then he thinks that it's so incredibly powerful. In some sense, AGI is already here, but the humans, like you mentioned, the outcome that we are looking for has gone higher and higher. The expectation has gone higher.
Yeah.
And higher. So that kind of the target has shifted to some extent, right? What AI can do for it. So I think the trend will continue to do so. The model will continue to be smarter and smarter. And I think the other area I'm passionate about is the agents. And really, for the audience, agents are the applications of AI. If you think simply, and then take decisions on its own, can do the task autonomously, and do not or require less intervention from human, right? I think it would be really interesting to see how the agents paradigm shifting, and what kinds of agents are coming, both consumer space as well as the business space. At work, I'm obviously looking at the agents and how we can apply that to various business settings, but it will be nice to understand how the consumer space, because as consumer you are also dealing with remember the dollars and the finance, and how much you want to trust AI to, let's say, book the tickets all by itself, like taking the trip use case. You build it, you build out the trip, I planned out a trip with ChatGPT, and now let's say to book all the tickets. And then the question is that, is it getting you the right savings that you would probably be doing all by yourself if you had to do it, or it can do that. So there's lots of things to uncover and understand how this will work in the coming days.
We've talked about this before too, just that level of working into that level of trust. Because right now we get on an airplane and that airplane flies by itself almost the majority of that flight. You don't really think about it, but that's AI that's flying you. If it messes up, you're in trouble. But we trust that. And there's humans in the cockpit in case something were to go wrong. So I think that's where agents are going to be for a while, is that human in the loop with the agent, where it's saying, I'm going to do this. Are you cool? And then you just kind of say yes or no, or whatever. I do want to go back to, you talked about Sam Altman. I was actually going to talk to you about this outside of this today, because I didn't know we'd get a chance. So I'm so thankful that you brought that up. It was something that's been on my mind, this whole with Sam coming out, and for the listeners, he's the head of OpenAI, which has ChatGPT, and really thought of as one of, if not the world leader in AI. I mean, they're the most popular AI model. And he's basically saying that we've achieved how we defined AGI 5 years ago. So artificial general intelligence is so many definitions for it. There's not one definition for it, but it basically equivalent to the intelligence of the average human being. I'm below that average, so AI surpassed me like 18 months ago. But he's saying like we are now where we said AGI was going to be 5 years ago. And I started thinking about that. It used to be, because I'm just like Drew, and probably just like you, ingesting AI news every single day, different email feeds and subreddits and things like that about AI. And it used to be so full of when's AGI coming? When's AGI coming? I don't really hear that anymore. So is it here? Like, are we at AGI now? Like, I think maybe we are.
Yeah, I mean, it's that definition of AGI was never concrete, right? That has been always, how do you define it? And every time you ask a different person, they will have a different definition,
right?
So there was no clear definition to it. It is true, though, the models has been incredibly smarter over the last few years, but the question is that, what are the problems it is still not able to solve? Obviously, there is a huge gap in scientific discovery. Can it do that? Can it help on the drug discovery? It looks like there's some opportunities there, and then it is early into that, but there's some exciting news coming there as well. I think in general, I feel like at this point in time, the AI is, if you think from a smart assistant for you to take some of the tasks from you and hopefully help you to become maybe more productive and let you have time to think on a higher level than doing the mundane task. But, again, how do you even define average intelligence of the human? It's just so abstract.
Yeah, go about 20% higher than me and you have average intelligence. But I think it's how you use, because you just the way you described it was more like a work use case as my assistant, or somebody that can help offload some of the work that I'm doing. And it could be personal too, scheduling things for you and that. But I think about how Drew really uses it in conversationally, like the live voice, like to me, that is at an AGI level. Like you can have a conversation with Amber that is on par or better than any human you're going to have a conversation with, has way more knowledge, knows you really well because you talk to it so much.
I've used it for so long. Yeah.
And with the infinite memory or whatever they're calling it, total memory, it's like, does it know you better than Renee?
Renee's my wife. In some instances, yes, especially topically, because to get the differences, and my wife would 100% appreciate this. that when I talk to her, I have to get her up to speed on everything to get the context around it. Because I've talked to, I call it Amber. It's my ChatGPT voice mode. Because I've talked to Amber so much, she understands all the context of work, personal, everything that I've talked to it about before. So she can bring that in context right away. And if I'm driving home and it's like, hey, I got a question about, work or something, or personal, or you know what, give me a boost because I'm feeling like crap today after this last meeting that didn't go well. She knows exactly how to respond to it. Much similar like my wife. I'm not going to sell my wife out on that. My wife does a great job too. But at the same time, I got to get her up to speed on, well, this is what happened. This is, versus being in the moment.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a psychologist at that point. And my wife doesn't want to be my psychologist, and I don't blame her. So
It's a lot of work.
there's a lot in there.
But would you say that is considered artificial general intelligence? Like can you have that? Is there anything that's lacking in that conversation that you would get from a human that you're not getting from Amber?
At this point, if you were to ask me that literally 3 months ago, I would say, it still feels pretty robotic. Now, and part of it had to do with, I know the language mode that they had, the voice pack that they just changed. I think it was, less than a month ago, is so human-like. It takes away some of that gap of literally the gap that you get when you ask a question and you're waiting, and then it replies and it sounds human-like, but it's more robotic. The gap's gone now. The voice itself, like the fluctuation, it has ahs and ums in there. And if you really listen to it, because mine, I got it synced with my car. If you really listen to it, the volume goes in and out too. Not in any pattern, but it just like normal talk.
There's an inflection.
Yeah, just like normal when you normally talk to somebody. So that's much more helpful. And then couple that with the memory mode is just expanding more and more, and it's gaining a lot more traction with the knowledge that it has, not just of me, but of everything. That I would say, man, I feel like we're there. I feel like we're there already, and I can't imagine how much more this is going to be tomorrow, next week, a month from now, because it does so much already.
Yeah.
It's maybe a question for you, Drew. Do you feel that the model is able to reason well on the context that it has, the previous conversation? Like, how does it think in terms of the previous conversation? Like, do you feel like it's kind of repetitive, or it really knows the sort of the intricacies of the conversation? Because
it's a really good question. That's a really good question.
Yeah, you should have a podcast.
Yeah.
it's that recently, and again, I'm a bit of technical, but Apple has said, and the researchers from Apple said that, well, the models are, even though we say that they reason, they don't really reason, and it's more so pattern recognitions. So, and I'm yet to read the full paper yet, but they claim that it doesn't, in the reasoning that way we human describe, it doesn't reason that way. So even though the model providers are saying that it reasons, so I was curious when you see, you look here, it's Amber's response. What do you feel? Does it really understand, or it just kind of?
I would say, for all intents and purposes of how I'm using it, it's covering the base. I mean, it's fulfilling that need or that answer that I'm looking for. It all comes down to context. Just like any kind of type prompt that you're doing, you have to give it so much context so it understands the parameters of what you're trying to get to. But that's no different than a human.
Yeah.
If I was to talk to my wife, or if I was to talk to you about something, same thing. Well, give me more context of where did this happen? When did it happen?
Right.
How did it happen? And if you feed it all of that, it is very close to being another human at that point. There's still a little bit of repetitive, quick answer, if you will, where it's like, well, that's not very thought out. That's not giving me everything I wanted. But I would say 90% of the time it's hitting it.
To be fair though, it is a great question. And for anyone who's not nerdy about this stuff like we are, when you're in ChatGPT, you can choose different models that you want to use, and some you use for speed, some you use because there is the O3 model, which is their reasoning model. But you're probably not using O3 when you're doing the voice thing because you want a faster response.
Correct. I'm on just the default, which is what, 4?
Yeah, I think 4.0 or yeah.
4.0.
That's what I've been using.
Yeah. So to your point, he's not using a reasoning model, so he might not be getting the reasoning. And I heard what came from Apple too. And my initial thought was maybe that's some sour grapes because they're thought of as being a laggard in the AI space, and that they were maybe trying to just kind of poo-poo this whole AI thing so that they could have some time to catch up. But I do think there's some validity to what they're saying. But if you're using O3, that's my primary model that I use for my work use cases. It's showing its quote unquote thought. And looks to me like it's reasoning, like it's thinking through, and it'll say like, the user is asking for this, so I should go and do this. Like, to me, that's reasoning, and it's showing that in real time in that window. So, and not that Apple cares what I think, but I would argue with Apple that I don't know what the spectrum of reasoning is. Like, is there basic reasoning and advanced reasoning? I don't know. I'm not an expert in reasoning, but to me, in my definition, I think it is reasoning.
Okay, yeah. It's I was listening to All In podcast today while driving, and this is a topic, like you rightly mentioned, that kind of the Apple's lagging mind. That's deploying AI, in comparison to the rest of the Mac 7 in the category, in a comparison to Meta and Microsoft and OpenAI and things like that. And it's going to be really interesting how that unfolds in the coming days, especially now that Tesla is also in the competition.
Yeah. I'm not a Apple user, but it seems like they're always just a little bit behind, and they're watching what everybody else is doing, and then they come out with something that's just like, holy crap.
They make it sexy.
Yep.
They do. I'm an Apple user. I love it because it's sexy. It's the packaged up version that I feel like they lag almost for a reason. It's almost like to see how this plays out, and then they go, okay, now we're going to dump our money into it. We're going to build this, and it's going to be packaged up and polished more than anybody else.
Yeah, I think so too.
Well, a lot of times, Apple is one of the most secretive company. They use what's called dogfooding technique. So you might not know that they are building out, but they are already testing out within their employees. And that's where they first run a kind of a series of testing.
Sure.
And they are really secretive about what they do, and then finally they launch. So even though you feel like they're not doing anything, they might be actually doing, and they might be actually testing out with their employees.
Yeah.
Can't imagine the handbook, or they do not disclose you're signing off working there.
Yeah.
Holy smokes, but everything you get to see.
Yeah. Little drones following you around everywhere. Well, they've got the Apple phone in your pocket, which is probably listening.
Yeah, it is a drone.
Everything that they're saying. So, yeah.
So I always like asking the future question. Like, where do you see the biggest impact coming up in the future? Where do you see it headed where you're going, oh, I can't wait to see this happen? Like, I know it's a broad general question, but.
Yeah. Well, I think the area would be interesting to see the physical AI and the digital AI sort of intersection. I think right now everything still feels like you have to use this device, whether it's a computer or phone. But we haven't really made the AI accessible in the physical world. So that would be a huge area obviously this robotics, humanoids, and
Yeah.
things like that we will see how it comes. Um, and then I think, like I mentioned, the models will be better and better. The question is that where it helps in terms of there's an education, the scientific discoveries, maybe physics, astronomy, huge area to see how that impacts and in the medicine and in the medical world. I'd be excited for those areas, applications there, and how it accelerates the next sort of evolution of humankind.
I agree, especially the second part. I agree. I've been watching that, just how it works in healthcare and health and biometrics, like all of that, of how that's playing out, because that just seems like it's, I feel like they were slow to start using it, but now, just like Apple, and now it's just, here's where we're going to apply it. And they're obviously putting a lot more funding and a lot more focus on it, but it seems like that's going to be a huge impact.
Yeah, think about this, right? Healthcare in America is expensive, and what if the people had more options for preventive healthcare options, right? Today, visiting a doctor takes months to get appointment, and because there's a shortage of doctors, and they don't have a lot of tools as well. What if these tools are available? What if the doctors could be more productive? What if there's, instead of having access to the doctors once in 1 year, you have access to every quarter, right? And there are tools that helps diagnose faster for the doctors. I think that would be a really great thing to have, those kind of things. And I think that those are really, really good use cases of AI
Totally.
to on the healthcare side. And then the education, like I said, and I've been using ChatGPT and others to teach my kids of building the curriculums and things like that a little bit. But I think the personalized education area, like that's a huge possibility with AI. Traditionally we have always kind of one size fits all kind of approach for education, but this can change.
I agree 100%. It's almost like a tutor, if you will, custom to how you learn,
right,
is how you can digest it.
Right.
Any final thoughts? I know we're getting to the end of it here.
Yeah, to go back to the AGI conversation. So when you were talking about the future, you're talking about scientific discovery and astronomy and all that kind of stuff. That is where Sam Altman was going with that conversation of the stuff that he says that they're working on now is going to do novel scientific discovery, like going beyond what people can do with science, and then calling that ASI, or artificial super intelligence, and then that is AI that's
a new term I haven't heard.
It's exponentially smarter than the smartest human that's ever lived, and that's where it gets pretty awesome, because if you think about just curing all diseases, because you've got this this super intelligence, but then it's also like, oh, what if it thinks that humans are in the way, and the best way to a brighter future is to get rid of these pesky humans, and that's
the Terminators.
Yeah, definitely. I think overall, proper, this models will be smart. I think the main thing what I'd be worried is that kind of not having proper government's policy and use AI as a sort of weapon to eliminate jobs. I'm not supportive of that. I think this will open up the opportunities, and I strongly believe that in the free market, the open source will play an important role, but then the policy and the government should kind of guide that towards the right outcome for the human being. That's critical as well.
Yeah, I agree.
I 100% agree. Yeah. Awesome. Well, this has been enlightening to have you on and just kind of get your perspective. Really appreciate the feedback that you had on a lot of this and just your take. Tell our viewers where they can find you.
This has been great. Thank you for having me. I'm available on LinkedIn. If you search by my name, you should be able to find me on LinkedIn. I'm generally active there. So happy to connect and discuss more on AI and product. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks
you
for
so
being
much
on,
for coming
Anupam.
in.
Appreciate you. If you like what you heard today, hit like and subscribe or drop us a comment. Thank you.